Good afternoon, beautiful people. Thank you so much for joining me again this afternoon for a conversation. I will be talking on shaving. Do Amish women shave their legs, shave their armpits, shave down there, shave anywhere? Do they cut their hair? And what about men? Do they shave anywhere? I will be mostly talking about where I come from because that is what I can speak the best into, and I come from one of the more liberal Amish. So it would be there's Schwarzentrooper. Those are very strict. We were kind of on the other side of the spectrum of the most liberal Amish. So that is just easiest for me to speak into, the most accurate, because there are others that had a completely different experience. There's so many different denominations of Amish. So I want to start with saying that a lot of the things were tradition, and a lot of the rules, many of the rules were unspoken. So many of those things, such as shaving, was never talked about that I'm familiar with in the time frame that I lived, or since I was born. Now, back in when my parents were little, or even in some other, like, there are places that they talk about it, but where I come from, they did not talk about shaving as a positive or a negative or a yes or a no. That was a personal, hygienic, personal thing. When I was growing up. Now, as I grew older, I actually had never heard of anyone being like shaving. Now, what I want to kind of lay out a little bit is, number one, we always wore dresses. So we always wore dresses, and our dresses always had sleeves. So our sleeves usually would come at least, short sleeve. It could be long sleeve in the winter, but it always had to have sleeves. So in considering that, we never really saw armpits. Like, they weren't exposed, and so no, we didn't see others' armpits, and we would have been ashamed to wear anything sleeveless, because we would have been showing hair, armpit hair. And same with, it says that we wore dresses, so our dresses came down below our knee, usually ankle length. And for the most part, it was more of a go to wear ankle length dresses that touch, like really long dresses that touch your shoe and even almost the floor. And right now, the culture I'm in now, styles change to different things, different looks, different styles, and that's a little bit how the Amish do too, where I come from. They change and times change. So right now, the go or the style is to have very short dresses. Some of them almost knee length, knee short, whatever you want to say. And where the youth group I would have come from don't really go with that, because they feel short is not modest. And so having that in mind, growing up, my legs would have always been covered to the knee. And so I didn't even see other girls' legs, whether they were shaven or not shaven, because they were covered. So it wasn't a conversation. It really wasn't a conversation either way, until I would say I don't remember exactly when it started. I believe I was about 18 when I heard here and there that some would shave their legs. And it was kind of one of those things, like, I tried to kind of see how others do, but it was really hard because your legs were always covered in with your dress. So I didn't even know what others did or didn't do, and I didn't really care, because I'm like, what's the point of shaving them if they're always covered, right? And it didn't bother me either way until I was living with a few other girls at one point, and then they shaved, and it was kind of oh. And I didn't, and then I started shaving, and I didn't like my legs, and that's it. I don't know that anyone Like I didn't do my armpits. It wasn't a thing. But there again, it was covered. You really didn't see, and it was more of a, it was a shameful thing. Like our bodies, the way we dressed, our bodies were almost it was promoted shame because, not wearing sleeves would have, people would have seen our armpit hair. That would have been, I would have been ashamed. It would have been a shameful thing. And same with, anything, if skin showed, oh, you don't show your legs, and it created the mindset that your legs are shameful. There's something weird with your legs. I remember when I started wearing shorts after I left, I felt like, whatever, my knees are weird things, right? And I started watching other people's knee. I'm like, everyone's knee is weird. It's just a heart, nearly, whatever. It's just a weird looking thing. But now it's like, I'm not ashamed of it because I realized everyone's just like that. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's normal. I'm normal. And so I started shaving, I would say, just my legs at around 19 or 20, I think, age 19 or 20. I know my mom thought that was kind of like, she didn't get upset, or she didn't say you can't or anything like that. She was just kind of like, why would you want to? Like, more of a, that's silly or whatever. But there again, people didn't really know if I did or not because it was covered. And in the winter especially, we wore socks and no one saw it. And in the summertime, so I started shaving my legs, and then after I continued shaving my legs since then. I now use a different method. I don't actually shave. I started using something else that I like better, but just the legs, and then the armpit hair or down there. Anywhere else, I have, of course, no idea if anyone else shaves down there because it wasn't ever talked about, and it wasn't ever, I don't think it ever came up in talking about it or feeling like I should, like, because everything was covered. You did not see it. So it really, and then my armpits, that was never talked about. And again, my assumption would be that there are girls that do. I have really no idea because you don't see it. So it was after about the time I left. I think I did like my armpits one time before I left, and it was just itchy. I don't know. It was like, I don't even like this, because it just felt like an extra step of something to do, and I think I just kind of trimmed them, if I remember correctly, and I didn't actually. When I tried shaving them, I don't know. It was kind of itchy, but I think I just trimmed them after that. I kind of forget. And then after I officially left the Amish, I started shaving them regularly. And now it would feel like just like I don't know, a briar patch, but no, it's not briary. It's not actually that prickly, but it would just feel like get itchy, or I don't like, if I would let it grow out, it would feel. I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of. We're natural, and that's how we're, like, we all have hair there, right? And I think we don't need to add shame to it. But yeah, I started then, and my siblings, I've noticed at one point I would always wear sleeves around them, but some of my sleeves would be kind of much shorter, and I know they've seen it, but they don't really see anything. That was just never a rule one way or the other as in my life. Now, I'm sure years ago, that could have been a rule, and I know some of others do have a rule about that. So, yes, the Amish, like my sisters or my former friends and stuff, many of those shave their legs. And there are also some that choose not to for whatever reason. So it's really a personal preference. And you just don't know. Like when I go into, my family or go into a crowd of people, I really don't know because it's covered. And there again, you know, down there, personally, I could make a video on the hygiene things, kind of what I do maybe. I that was just never talked about in our community. That just never came up. I remember feeling kind of going through that change. I felt almost as if, okay, do others have that? Is this just me? Because it was, you know, it wasn't talked about that you're gonna start growing hair in different areas of your body, and so I was ashamed of it, and I was always like, do others have, you know, hair too? But I really didn't know. Um, but yeah, it's much more, it's a personal preference. And um, as far as cutting your hair and the, you know, the length, the head hair, that was an absolute no-no, because of 1 Corinthians 11:13 or 13, 1 Corinthians 11, where it talks about the wearing a covering and not cutting your hair. And so I don't know that there was ever talked about, even after I became a member. I would have heard all the rules, and they never once mentioned it that we couldn't cut them. But it was a traditional, unspoken, one of those unspoken rules that you just, tradition that you didn't cut your hair. Women's hair was not to be cut. And so, yeah, I have friends and family whose hair are angle length, and some of them are, you know, shorter than mine, and mine are full length. I just have them trimmed. So, and at one point my sisters got so thick and so long that she was getting headaches because they always put them up, and so she would get a headache because of the weight. And so mom went through with a scissors and just not snip snip, but just open it, the one, and just kind of went through it and sent them out like a lot. She had a whole pile of hair, and just to make it more doable or like more tolerable for her headaches and stuff. And that I've known of people that have really thick and long hair and they just chop them off, and it's not, it just never was a big, like, I knew it was an absolute no-no in our house, but I don't know that it was ever spoken about actually to that say you can or can't, like a rule in church. It was one of those unspoken things. There are many, many things that are unspoken in their culture that people practice just because we've always done it, and it's actually more of a tradition than an actual religion. They don't, it's just passed down generation to generation. And then the men's hair had to be cut a certain way, and again, like, they couldn't grow a mustache, and that's in a sense weird because, or was always interesting to me, because if you have a mustache, that's natural hair growth, right? And yet there was a way back something that happened in the military that they wanted to be, that I think people in the military grew mustache or something, and they wanted to be different from the world, and they want to be set apart, and so they decided to not wear the mustache. Now it's a rule, you can't grow a mustache, but it's now a tradition. It's not a religion. It's not that they feel the Bible says like that. They just have it because that's the way it's always been done for the last years, and that's a tradition they want to pass on. So, unspokenly. So, yeah, I hope this was a little insightful for you. I know there's a lot of different churches that would absolutely not allow that, and then there are those where I come from where it was just one of those unspoken things, or it was just one of those things that was a personal preference. I know I could have shaved my legs, my armpits, and down there, everything, you know, completely, and no one would have known the difference. They maybe would have seen my legs in the summertime a little bit sometimes, but no one would have known the difference really. So hope this is helpful, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.